Hello and welcome. We are live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Ceasefire hopes fade as Israel strikes Gaza, Lebanon. US to deploy new military assets to the West Asia. Ukrainian President Zelensky blasts allies for zero response to North Korean deployment in Russia. US announces additional security aid for Ukraine. With few days left for US presidential election, both Trump and Harris make final push to voters in key states. And catastrophic flooding in Spain leaves widespread destruction, over 205 killed. Updates from West Asia conflict first. At least 19 people were injured in central Israel after the launch of 3 projectiles from Lebanon early on Saturday. The National Ambulance Service previously reported that 7 people in the central Israeli town of Tira were injured. The Israeli military said that sirens sounded in several areas of central Israel after the projectile launch. IDF said some projectiles had been intercepted by the Israeli military. Earlier, Lebanon accused Israel on Friday of rejecting a ceasefire after the Israeli military bombed Hezbollah's South Beirut stronghold for the first time this week. At least 10 strikes hit Beirut's southern suburbs before dawn after Israel issued evacuation warnings. The strikes on Lebanon came a day after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met US officials to discuss a possible deal to end the war against Hezbollah ahead of Tuesday's US presidential election. Now, Lebanon's PM Najib Mikati condemned the Israeli attacks and said the renewed bombing confirms the Israel's rejection of all efforts being made to secure a ceasefire. US, Egyptian and Qatari mediators have tried for months to broker a truce and hostages for prisoners exchange for Gaza. Now, the United States on Friday announced the deployment of additional military assets to West Asia. The Pentagon chief in a statement said that the US will deploy B-52 bombers, fighter jets, refueling aircraft and Navy destroyers to the West Asia. The latest deployments would take place in the coming months. And this decision comes as the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier and its accompanying warships are set to depart the region soon. The move aims to maintain a robust US presence amid ongoing conflicts involving Israel, Hamas and Hezbollah. The additional resources build on previous US defense deployments to the West Asia in support of Israel, including a third missile defense system deployed to the country late last month, operated by American troops on the ground. And the Israeli army on Friday claimed that it had eliminated one of Hamas's last high-ranking members. The IDF said in a statement that Izz al-Din Qassab, a member of Hamas political bureau, had been eliminated during an airstrike in southern Gaza town of Khan Yunis. Israel described Qassab as one of the last surviving high-ranking members of Hamas responsible for coordinating with other groups in Gaza. The IDF said Qassab held the authority to direct the execution of terrorist attacks against the state of Israel. Moving on to Russia-Ukraine conflict, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky urged allies to act decisively against North Korean troops reportedly stationed in Russia, warning they may soon engage Ukrainian forces. In a video posted online, Zelensky highlighted North Korea's advances in military strength, missile technology and weapons production. Zelensky cautioned that the first thousands of North Korean soldiers are near Ukraine's border and that Ukraine has identified each location where these troops are stationed. However, he criticized Western allies for their watching stance, noting Kiev's lack of long-range weapons needed to counter the threat. Zelensky's plea followed an interview with South Korea's KBS television on Thursday, where he expressed frustration over the lack of action from the US, UK and Germany.
Putin перевіряє реакцію Заходу.
Putin is checking the reaction of the West. Putin is checking the reaction of NATO countries. Putin is also checking the reaction of South Korea. And I believe that after all these reactions, Putin will decide and increase the contingent. I believe that the reaction that is there today is nothing, it is zero. Then the number of Korean soldiers will be increased on our soil.
Я про це відповідав нещодавно.
Now, the U.S. Defense Department on Friday unveiled a new $425 million security assistance package for Ukraine aimed at addressing Kiev's critical defense needs. The Pentagon statement highlighted that the aid includes air defense interceptors, munitions for rocket systems and artillery, armored vehicles and anti-tank weapons. This marks the 69th aid installment under the Presidential Drawdown Authority, a program that enables the transfer of U.S. military stockpiles to Ukraine. Since August 2021, this program has continuously supplied Ukraine with essential equipment to strengthen its defenses against escalating threats. Now, North Korea declared on Saturday it must continue strengthening its self-defense, blaming the US and South Korea for driving the Korean peninsula toward conflict. A foreign ministry spokesperson asserted Pyongyang would ramp up efforts to counteract what it calls military threats from hostile forces and maintain regional balance. Accusing Washington and Seoul of conducting over 20 war plots this year, North Korea claimed it has no choice but to prevent potential nuclear conflict. And in a separate statement, Kim Yo-jong, sister of leader Kim Jong-un, criticized the UN Secretary General for condemning recent missile tests, insisting these tests are purely defensive. North Korea recently demonstrated power by testing its new solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, the Hwasong-19. And as the dust settles on a pivotal week in the U.S. election campaign, candidates are making their final push ahead of Election Day, November 5. The focus is shifting to voter turnout and key battleground states with renewed vigor in projecting the key issues.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are traveling from one state to another to impart last-hour impression on voters, as Wisconsin is one of the key swing states. Both parties on Friday reiterated their issues to address the concerns of the voters. As Republican candidate Trump focused on migrants, jobs and border security, Democratic Kamala Harris assured tax cut and elderly health care.
Of all new jobs, net job gains in the past year have gone to illegal migrants. And the jobs were taken from African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and union workers. I don't think the unions are too happy about this. But I told you this was going to happen. It was inevitable.
At the top of my list is bringing down the cost of living for you. That will be my focus every single day as president, including I will give a middle-class tax cut to over 100 million Americans. If you are caring then for an elderly parent or relative, my plan is to cover the cost of home care under Medicare.
Harris, who only entered the race in July after President Joe Biden dropped out amid fears over his declining mental acuity, was joined on stage by star rapper Cardi B in the latest of the series of high-energy events. Earlier, Harris reprimanded Trump for using violent rhetoric when discussing one of his chief Republican critics.
He has increased his violent rhetoric, Donald Trump has, about political opponents, and in great detail suggested rifles should be trained on former Representative Liz Cheney. This must be disqualifying. Anyone who wants to be president of the United States who uses that kind of violent rhetoric is clearly disqualified and unqualified to be president.
More than 70 million Americans have already cast their ballots ahead of Election Day on Tuesday. Opinion polls show Trump and Harris running neck to neck, with victory depending on who prevails across the 7 swing states. Bureau Report, DD India.
And with 3 days to go until the U.S. presidential election, Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Kamala Harris are campaigning hard in Midwestern swing states in a last-minute bid to woo voters. Both candidates are accusing each other of negative campaigning while launching no-holds-barred attacks on the other. How does the American voter see this? Amritpal Singh travels to upstate Pennsylvania to take stock. Watch this.
The race so tight, the stakes so high, that vilifying the opponent has become the norm this election season. Violent threats of revenge, racism, misogyny, negative campaigning, it's all there by the bucket load. The dance of democracy is as alluring as it is disturbing. So what impact do these negative campaigns have on US elections? How are the Americans responding to it?
Both sides are kind of like either scared or they hate each other.
The individuals that's running right now should bring more of unity instead of division. With the false narratives that's being pursued on both parties, Republican and Democratic, they're not bringing the unity that we probably need to even to begin the conversation of change. Who are we as the people to have that same unity or to show that unity?
Political watchers say it's so because the stakes this time are very high for both sides, especially in the swing states.
Both campaigns themselves are, making a very strong presence here in Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania is absolutely required for either that wants to win this. Democrats are very concerned that their base might not come out. Republicans are also making their campaigns on. If hardcore Republicans are charged up.
It's very interesting. I was very surprised when I saw it. It says Republicans for Harris Walls, clearly pointing out that they are trying to woo voters, win over voters from the other side to win this election. It's that close, it's that tight, and swing states like Pennsylvania could indeed decide who sits in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. With cameraman Sanjay Jaina, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Collegeville, Pennsylvania.
And Georgia is one of the key swing states of U.S. presidential elections. DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh talked to Bob Eramili, a council member of the city of Johns Creek, being one of the first elected members of the city council from the Indian American community in Georgia. Bob talks about his experience in public service, issues and political significance of Indian community in Trump-Harris close contest.
We are in Atlanta. I have with me one of the first Indian American person elected to public office here in Georgia, Mr. Bob Eramili, member of the John Creek City Council. Mr. Eramili, welcome to DD India. Now, first, I want to learn from you your experience as an Indian American holding a public office here in Georgia.
Wonderful. I was serving in the Indian Air Force as a combat pilot. There I learned that if not you, who else? If you don't defend, who else will defend? The same ethos, I got it to my adopted country and my city, Johns Creek City. So therefore, when I ran for election, amazingly, this city is so agnostic to race, color, and country of origin. To just give you an idea, I got voted by about close to 60% of Caucasian people and about 10-12% of Indian people. So that shows that this city is kind of merit-oriented rather than where you come from, what you represent, what nationality you belong, or country of origin, or something like that.
Right, and here we are looking at the presidential elections, and I also want to broaden the question about Indian Americans. What is the political significance of Indian Americans in America in general and Georgia as a swing state in particular?
Typically, Indians vote around 20 to 25% for Republicans. President Trump managed to increase it to around 30-35% last time around. And then it so happened that this time they're almost close to 30-35% are expected to vote for President Trump. So I think we play a significant pivotal role, very much like the Jewish population, which is about double the size of ours.
And finally, coming to the big contest, Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. What kind of contest are we looking at, according to you?
I think if the issues in the center stage are illegal immigration, for which we had fair amount of, since I'm also in the city council, I know firsthand the city chief of police comes and gives us a brief on what kind of law and order situation prevails. And we do get an idea that we should be controlling this illegal immigration. That is an issue. And the inflation. See, that's at one point in time, last 4 years, we had an inflation of 8%. That is unheard of. And especially when somebody left it at 1.75%. President Trump left it at 1.75.
Right. On that note, Mr. Bob Eramali, thank you very much for speaking with DD India.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Very nice.
That was one of the first Indian-American person elected to public office here in Georgia, with camera person Jayashankar Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in Atlanta.
All right, we are slipping into a very short break. On the other side, more stories. Keep watching DD India Live.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. In Washington, D.C., U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Friday highlighted the significance of Diwali and celebrated its decade-long tradition at the department initiated by Secretary John Kerry. He noted the celebration's global reach, with over 1 billion Hindus, Buddhists and Sikhs marking the festival through rangoli, flower garlands and diyas. Quoting Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore, "Faith is the bird that feels the light when the dawn is still dark." Blinken highlighted Diwali's message of hope.
And practices for different communities. But the Bengali poet Tagore perhaps captured the spirit of the holiday best when he wrote, and I quote, that faith is the bird that feels the light when the dawn is still dark. At its core, Diwali is about the idea that light will push back against darkness.
And Blinken emphasized South Asian culture's valuable role in American society, noting that the nation's strength lies in its diversity, enriched by the contributions of South Asian Americans, naming key figures like Vice President Kamala Harris and World Bank President Ajay Banga, while wishing for a peaceful and prosperous future.
It's also a reminder of the many ways South Asian culture and Americans of South Asian descent have enriched our nation, from the novels of Jhumpa Lahiri to the fashion designs of Prabal Gurung. The United States derives so much strength from this diversity, including truly remarkable public servants. I can think of one offhand, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, World Bank President Ajay Banga, our very own Deputy Secretary of State, Rich Verma. As we celebrate Diwali, may we continue to reach for that light when the dawn is dark. May we keep working to shape a world a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more prosperous, and do it together. Thank you, and happy Diwali.
And heavy flooding leaves widespread destruction in central and eastern Spain. Over 205 killed in worst-hit calamity. Huge rain swept the eastern province of Valencia and beyond, causing major destruction. Thousands of volunteers arrived to the flood-hit areas in Spain's Porta and Valencia to help clear debris and pump water from the streets and homes. The government has deployed another 500 troops to bolster the 1,200 already on site for search, rescue and logistic tasks. Spain has suffered its worst flooding disaster in recent history, probably deadliest to hit Europe since the 1970s. Spain's State Met Agency says adverse weather conditions will continue over the weekend. And in a milestone decision at the UN COP16 summit in Cali, Colombia, nearly 200 nations approved a permanent consultative body to involve indigenous peoples in nature conservation decisions, marking a major recognition of their global role in preserving biodiversity. This new body, extending to local communities, aims to integrate traditional knowledge into environmental efforts as part of the 2022 Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Framework, which seeks to halt nature's decline by 2030. Delegates also adopted a measure honoring the contributions of people of African descent to conservation, enabling them better access to resources for biodiversity projects. Colombia, hosting COP16, emphasized the move as a critical step to broaden participation and resource access for marginalized communities in global conservation initiatives. Ancom McLaughlin, the visionary Irishman who transformed Dubai duty-free into a retail powerhouse generating billions, has passed away at 81. Arriving in the United Arab Emirates in 1983, McLaughlin dedicated over 40 years to building Dubai duty-free, witnessing Dubai's evolution from a small trading port to a global metropolis. McLaughlin passed away on Wednesday following a brief illness. And a high-level Indian delegation participated in G20 Disaster Risk Reduction Working Group meeting in Brazil's Belém. The delegation was led by Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister P.K. Mishra. With the active participation of the Indian delegation, consensus arrived in finalizing the first ministerial declaration on disaster risk reduction. During the sessions, Mishra shared the progress made by the Government of India in reducing disaster risk and in upscaling disaster financing in the country. An encounter has broken out between terrorists and security forces in Kashmir area of central Kashmir's Srinagar district. Acting on specific intelligence, a joint team of local police and security personnel conducted a cordon and search operation in Kashmir early this morning. As the team moved closer to the identified location, terrorists hiding in the area opened fire, initiating a gunfight. The exchange of fire remains ongoing as per the latest reports. Further updates will follow as the situation develops. Another gunfight broke out in Panar area of Bandipur district. Terrorists opened indiscriminate fire on Friday late evening and escaped into the forest. Search operation still continues. And Delhi residents wake up to thick smog and poor air quality on Saturday as air quality of national capital remained in the very poor category. With an air quality index of over 300 in many areas, authorities urged residents to limit outdoor activities, especially vulnerable groups such as children, the elderly and those with respiratory conditions. Many locals donned masks as a precaution and relied on air purifiers. The smog, primarily caused by vehicular emissions and stubble burning in neighboring states, has sparked concerns over rising pollution issues among the residents. Sports now. Will start with cricket. Shubman Gill and Sarfaraz Khan are at the crease as India is 6 wickets down against New Zealand in the third test against New Zealand at Wankhede Stadium on Saturday. At lunch, India were 195 for 5, trailing New Zealand by only 40 runs. Post-lunch, Glenn Phillips removed all-rounder Ravindra Jadeja for 14 runs in 25 deliveries. Rishabh Pant also fell for 60 of 59 balls. Pant scored his half-century in only 36 balls, while Gill raced to his 50 in 66. On day one, Ravindra Jadeja claimed his 14th 5-wicket haul in Test cricket as India made a remarkable comeback to bowl out New Zealand for 235. Football now. Vinicius Jr. and Rafinha lead Brazil squad for this month's World Cup qualifiers, while Neymar was left out of the team named by coach Dorival Jr. on Friday. Rafinha has been one of Barca's standout performers in the first half of the season and is coming off the back of a goal in a 4-0 win over Real Madrid. He also had a hat-trick against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. Vinicius Jr. will return to international action after missing last month's qualifiers with a neck injury, while Real Madrid teammate Endrick was left out. Brazil, who are fourth in the South American standings with 16 points, play at Venezuela on November 14 before hosting Uruguay 5 days later. And for the first time in 36 years, Los Angeles held a championship parade for the Dodgers as tens of thousands of fans lined the streets of downtown LA on Friday to celebrate the franchise's 8th World Series championship. Thousands more gathered at Dodger Stadium for a pep rally in center field to conclude the festivities. The celebration began at the stadium and the parade wrapped up by noon as the buses carrying the World Series champions made their way to the field. For many players and manager Dave Roberts, the day honored both of the Dodgers' World Series titles in the last 5 seasons. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.